presents the Pro2 TM212 install. Shown are the tools that were used in the making of this video: a socket wrench, Phillips head screwdriver, needle nose pliers, and a side cutter. These are typical tools needed for the install of the TROLLMaster system, but be aware that your install may use different or additional tools. Now let's join Scott, who is getting started with the install.
There's two small flats on here. We'll just trim those out of the way, so we don't need those. So before you put this bracket on, you're going to put the servo in the bracket, because when you mount it on the back side, put the screws through the back. It's a helpful hint just to put the screws in out here and then mount it up on the motor with the bolt. That way you save a little bit of knuckle. Alright. So from there, we're going to change out our throttle rod. Here's the factory throttle rod as it's installed. It's up on the tab. This is the TROLLMaster rod we're going to replace it with. TROLLMaster rod has a longer loop. That's for a specific reason. So that when the TROLLMaster servo is pulling on the throttle, it will allow it to move fully without pulling on the tiller arm or the remote shaft cable. It's also nice to make a little mark on your rod before you take it out, so that if you ever do return it to factory, you can set it right back in and away you go. Loosen up this screw. Sure not to loosen this up too much, otherwise you drop stuff down in the motor. Slide that off and that out. You can take a little grease from the factory rod and go ahead and put some on the TROLLMaster rod. And the TROLLMaster rod will slip over, drop on, pull the throttle linkage back, slide it in. So when you go to mount this rod, you'll see how it's mounted with the loop all the way forward, so that when the TROLLMaster pulls on it, it will ride on there. Alright, so before you tighten the screw on this, go ahead and hold the rod all the way forward, just with your hand. The tiller arm is actually in the low idle setting or in the slow setting. That's going to set your stud where you want it. And then just go ahead and hold the rod forward and tighten the screw. Don't over tighten it, tight is tight enough. And that's that. Before you connect the braided cable, you can see that it comes with two loops. One's loose, just to keep the keeper on there. Before you set this, you'll actually want to plug in the TROLLMaster and plug it into the gray cable here. Plug this end into the gray cable to power the servo. So you'll want to turn the TROLLMaster on, leave it in the idle setting, and then this arm you'll be ready to set that. So what we're doing is we're going to pull these nuts off the battery and get ready to mount the TROLLMaster to the battery. As you can see, there's usually a lot of accessories and different things connected and hooked up. Just be careful not to disturb or damage anything while you're trying to do this. You'll just make more work for yourself. TROLLMaster just needs either direct power to the battery, 12 volt, or you can even run it on a fuse panel up under the dash. We prefer you go right back to the battery. It's the cleanest source of power. Be sure not to cross any connections. Get a little spark and make your day a little shocking. Sorry for the puns. Okay, so I'm just going to loosen those for now. I need to put my terminals on, and then we'll go ahead and get that connected. Alright, so when you're routing the TROLLMaster cable through the boat, through the back of the boat to the motor, you obviously want to try to tuck it up underneath. You know, and get it up out of the way, make it nice and clean and neat. So what we're going to do is go through the battery compartment, up through here, and then we'll pull our slack, run it down along here, and then we're ready to put it inside the motor. So when you go to put it inside the motor, what you're going to want to do is find a nice spot, usually down along the side. Sometimes there's this little plug here. You can pull that out or make a slice here. Through some of these have a rubber cap you can cut through to get the wire in. You obviously don't want to go around moving parts. Don't put it through the choke hole, or the shifter rather. Don't put it through the shifter or the choke side. Don't try to cram and wedge it in between things. That can damage the wiring. So it can be a little tricky to find the right spot, but I think what we're going to do here today is we're going to go right through here. And I'll show you that here in a minute. Alright, so when choosing a spot to run your wiring in through, we obviously got it in through the plug. Now we need to bring it up to where it's going to plug into the servo motor. So you want to take your time and look at where the warm spots are going to really be. This manifold's going to get hot, obviously, when the motor's running, so you don't want to lay anything across it that's going to be close. This stuff's nice and shielded. So we'll run it around the back side, up through this little clip, and then we'll plug it into our servo. That'll be out of the way of all the moving parts in the front of the motor. You don't want to run anything up through here, interworking the shift and the clutch, or the shift and the choke rather. So we'll put this up here. Any more back. And then what we'll end up doing is a little cable tie right here, a little cable tie up here, and we'll plug our servo in with the locking end, just like that. So I'll get a few cable ties and we'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so we got one cable tie there. That'll keep it kind of secured. We do provide a few of these in the kit. Some guys use a lot, which is fine. So we'll just kind of find our sweet spot here. Every motor is going to be a little bit different. You know, we like to just keep things out of the way of moving parts and keep them away from the heat. The moving parts, I suppose, are probably the biggest concern. You don't want your cable getting caught anywhere that's going to pull on anything and damage anything. So, and keep in mind you will be putting your cover back on after you put this wire in, so you don't want it hanging out too far. Make sure you tuck everything back the way it was. I'll probably clean this up a little bit more, but you get the idea of tucking this out of the way. We'll trim these ends off here as we go, and then we'll get to connecting our cable. So when zip tying things to the tube, obviously this is an air line for your intake. You don't want it too tight. Tight enough just to keep the cable there, but don't close this hose off. Don't get on it and tighten it up too much. Alright, now that we got our cable installed on the engine, we'll actually work it through a little bit here. We'll attach it to some of these other motor cables to keep it out of the way of any moving parts in the engine itself. Just a few zip ties to keep it tucked away. Watch out for your moving parts again. You're going to have to move those eventually in operation, so you don't want to get too close to those. But find a nice secure spot. Every application is going to be a little bit different depending on what you have set up on your motor. Alright, so now that we got our motor cable routed, we'll go ahead and plug the TROLLMaster to the battery here. Put the positive side on. Just hand tight for now, and then we'll hit it with the socket after we're done here. Slide that back. Put the ground on here. So after the unit's connected to the battery, your cables ran, your servo motor's plugged in, but the braided cable from the servo to the throttle linkage is not installed. Turn the TROLLMaster on, leave it in the idle setting, and then set your cable. Alright, so now that we have everything hooked up, we'll go ahead and connect our braided cable. To do that, we're going to want to put it on the brass stud. So what I'm actually going to do is disconnect the rod here to put this behind the rod. So we'll just loosen up this screw just enough to get the rod free. Slip that rod out, let her set. Slip this over the screw around the barrel. Position that back, and then we'll pull this back to reinstall our rod. Sometimes easier said than done. Okay, and you can see that this is now behind it. That's going to help keep it on. That'll help keep it aligned where it needs to be so it can pull and actuate the throttle properly. So now we'll go ahead and reconnect. We're still in the idle position on our tiller arm. We'll push our rod forward and tighten the screw. Don't over tighten it, just tight enough. Okay, so now that we've got that done, we'll go ahead and set our servo arm. So you can see right now it's just at a generic position. It comes from the factory after we test them. We can't set them for every motor, so what we do is leave them in the set there. Basically all you have to do, leave the TROLLMaster on the idle position. So now this is set to your 0 point. When you go to unscrew this screw, be careful that you don't drop it. Set that aside for now. So what we're actually going to do is take the servo arm off the servo body, just with a little help from our side cutter here. See, that's off the body. So now we'll position this at about the 5 o'clock position, right about there. So we just push it back on the stud, and then we'll return the screw to hold the servo arm to the body. And again, not too tight, just to cinch it up there. Now, we loosen our set screw, put our cable through the barrel, pull this somewhat tight, not too tight, just line it up, and then we'll just hand tighten this for now. And here's what I'll do. Get a little screwdriver on here, tighten it up just a little bit. You'll notice that it wants to spin. A little tip for that, grab your little mini needle nose, hold her down, be sure not to cut the cable or anything. Hold it tight, and we'll just cinch this down a little bit more. Okay, now we're ready to test the unit's functions. Okay, now that our cable is attached to here and here, and we took the slack out, so pull the slack out, tighten the screw. Once it's in the position that you want it set in, you can go ahead and put the barrel swedge that comes with the cable behind it and just crimp her down with a little needle nose. That's just to keep it secure in that barrel so that it doesn't slip while you're operating it. So you'll notice what I did was I actually brought the cable up over on the other side of this arm. That's just to help keep it clear when you go to actuate the throttle here. It'll keep it from hitting anything. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and run that for you. So as we're pulling, it's staying nice and out of the way, and you can see everything's moving the way it should. We did have to adjust the slack, and you will have to, before you put this swedge on, make sure you do test it, run it all the way up, run it all the way down. You can see there is just a touch there. That's normal, that's what you want. You want your throttle to be able to close all the way and still function properly. So we got our throttle able to close all the way down in the idle position. So we can go ahead and switch it to run, and we'll dial it up. Everything looks good there. Tops all the way out and brings all the way down. No cable slip. We crimped our crimp on. We'll cut this off at the end here. Alright, so what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and put the cover back on. You want to make sure again that your cables are nice and tucked away and clean. There's nothing in the way. This can just come set down on here. Just make sure everything's up and out of the way, nice and tight. Give everything a good once over before you're done, just to make sure you got it all right. Doesn't hurt to reread through the manual as well. So we'll go ahead and put the cover on and be ready to go.